My name is Kirsten Tibballs and today I'm going to be creating for you a decadent layer chocolate and ganache cake. It's a guaranteed winner when it's served, and that is mainly due to our hero ingredient, which is the Maldon Sea Salt. You're going to love it in this recipe. Now this is a very big cake, which is perfect for a family gathering or when you're having friends coming over, but you can simply just halve it and use a smaller cake tin. We are starting with the buttermilk. Make sure your buttermilk is at room temperature before you start the recipe, as well as your eggs. We're going to place both of those ingredients into the mixer. So the buttermilk first, eggs, some vanilla bean paste, and the melted coconut oil. If you can't get coconut oil, you can replace it with a mild vegetable oil like grapeseed oil. This is going to make the cake really nice and moist. We're going to combine these ingredients together with the paddle attachment for 2 minutes. You can do this by hand if you've got a strong arm. Our liquids are thoroughly mixed. All my dry ingredients are sieved apart from the sugar, which doesn't need to be sieved. Got some bicarb soda, some baking powder, some Dutch processed cocoa powder, which is going to make your cake beautiful, rich and dark in colour and has a delicious chocolate flavour. We have 10 grams of Maldon Sea Salt, which is a generous amount. Now this certainly does not need to be sieved. Just going to gently mix the dry ingredients together. I'm going to add these into the liquids and fold it through with a spatula by hand. You don't need to worry about maintaining the air at this stage. We're just going to mix it together. It should make a thick chocolatey paste. Last ingredient is some hot water, which is going to sit on top. And then we're going to blend it all through with a whisk. This is going to bake in a fan-forced oven at 175 degrees Celsius for approximately 45 minutes to an hour. Divide the mix evenly between the two tins. To check when it's ready, test them with a skewer, and as soon as the skewer comes out clean, they're ready to take out. After they've been out of the oven for 5 minutes, flip them over onto a flat tray so we flatten the top of the cake a little bit and let them cool in the tin. Now we're up to the exciting part, which is tempering some chocolate. You only need to temper chocolate if it contains cocoa butter or you're using it on its own, where we are with this decoration. It's really easy with my tips and tricks. So we've got chocolate here in the button form. If you're using a block of chocolate, you need to shave it or chop it evenly as you can. We're going to place this in the microwave. We're going to start with 30-second increments and go down to 15-second increments if needed. We're going to melt it on high, stirring it in between each application of heat until we have 50% liquid and 50% solid chocolate. Then we're not going to heat it anymore. So after some vigorous stirring, that solid chocolate will melt, which will leave your chocolate tempered. We're going to pipe some bunny ears with this chocolate. To make the chocolate hold in a more three-dimensional shape, we're going to add a little bit of water, which is normally a no-no with chocolate, but I'm going to show you how to add it just to slightly thicken the chocolate to make it perfect for piping. Another thing to note as well is that when you're melting chocolate, you should always use a plastic bowl because glass tends to get too hot and it can untemper your chocolate after you've tempered it. So we get a bowl of water and I'm just going to add 1 or 2 drops at a time. Mix it in, and then we pull the chocolate up and drizzle it back in. If it holds on the surface, we're ready to go. This isn't quite there, so I'm going to add another couple of drops of water. So it's okay if you add water as long as you're stirring it when you add it. So we can see when we drizzle chocolate now on the surface, it's holding quite well. So we're now ready to pipe. I have a template here that I've printed for rabbit ears. I'm going to place a piece of baking paper on top. I'm using a piping bag, but you can also use a Ziploc bag to pipe the ears. Have all this set up before you start to temper your chocolate so it doesn't set in the meantime. Cut about 10 millimeters off the tip. Using the template as a guide, this is quite easy. It's like drawing. Twist the bag. Then just follow the lines. We're going to leave those at room temperature to set. As they set, they will curve a little bit as the chocolate contracts, which gives us a more natural ear shape. Now I do recommend that you do at least a couple of pairs in case you break one. We're now making the ganache for the cake. Don't be alarmed, it is a lot of chocolate, but it's going to be worth it in the end. I'm using a good quality chocolate. To determine if it's a good quality chocolate, check that it has cocoa butter in it. We're going to place some cream into the saucepan, place the vanilla and some ground cinnamon into the chocolate. We're going to bring this to a boil, pour the boiled cream over the chocolate, cinnamon and vanilla. We're going to let that sit for 2 minutes before whisking it together. Whisk that together until we've got a beautiful, supple, shiny ganache. That's exactly what we're looking for. Look at that gloss and sheen on the ganache. What we do now with the ganache is we cover it with plastic wrap so it touches the surface, and then we're going to leave it at room temperature for 4 to 6 hours. So you're going to do this before you start your cake, so by the time your cake is baked and cooled, you're ready to go. The cakes are baked and cooled. They can be stored in the freezer for up to a month if well wrapped. Fully defrost them before trimming them. If you can, use a serrated edge knife for cutting the cake. And when I cut the cake, I take the top off first. So just find your lowest point and rotate the cake around as you go. Rather than cutting from one side to the other, you'll get a much more even cut by doing it this way. Now we're going to trim these cakes in half, so we'll have 4 layers of cake and 4 layers of ganache. So exactly the same technique. As I said, this cake is a large cake and will feed up to 20 people. So if you're wanting to make a small one, that's no problem at all. You can just halve the recipe. Place the cake on your serving plate. Spread the ganache evenly on each layer of cake. Look at that texture and that finish. It's going to be so yummy. Just push the ganache a little bit to the edge without it going too much over. Place your next layer of cake on. Make sure it's lined up evenly and press it down on top to ensure it's level. Then we repeat the layers. Put a thin layer of ganache on each layer of the cake, leaving enough of the ganache left to pipe on the surface. If you don't have a piping bag and nozzle, don't worry, you can simply just scoop it and spoon it on with a slightly warm spoon. I'm using a 20mm piping nozzle. Once your ears are set, peel them off the paper. And we just stick them in, and that pipe ganache helps to hold them up. I have a little bit of gold metallic, or you can use gold luster. We're going to take a generous pinch of the Maldon Sea Salt, sprinkle it in, and then we're going to mix it with that metallic powder, and we're going to use that as part of our garnish. Now I have some chocolate Easter eggs. You don't have to make them yourself. You can use store-bought eggs. I have made these ones though. Now we're going to place these on the cake. I'm just going to melt the egg. Once you've melted the opening, we place that while the chocolate is still wet into that beautiful Maldon Sea Salt. Have a look at that. And to finish, a little sprinkle of our Maldon Sea Salt, of course with a touch of gold. Now this is a fantastic cake. For me, this is best eaten at room temperature. It's perfect with a scoop of ice cream or a drizzle of cream. The perfect match, chocolate and Maldon Sea Salt. Happy Easter.